Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into data stewardship. And I know you guys are already pretty familiar with relational databases, so this should be right up your alley.
Yeah, definitely.
But imagine this. You walk into a library, thousands of books.
Oh, wow.
It's total chaos. No organization, no catalog, no Dewey Decimal System, nothing.
That sounds like a nightmare for a bookworm like me.
Right. How would you ever find the book you're looking for?
You wouldn't. It would be impossible.
Exactly. That's kind of what it's like when a company's data is a mess. And data stewardship, that's like being the librarian for all that data. It's about bringing order to all that chaos.
Love that analogy. You need a way to find what you need, right? And make sure it's accurate and that everyone in the company understands what they're looking at.
Yeah, exactly. And like a good librarian, a data steward needs a system, right? The rules, the definitions, and a way to deal with any issues that come up.
Absolutely.
So let's start with the basics. What exactly is metadata? And why is it so important in this library that we're talking about?
So metadata, it's basically data about data. It's like, think of it as the card catalog in our library analogy. It tells you, what a particular piece of data represents, how it's defined, where it came from, how it should be used, who's responsible for it. It's super important because without metadata, you're basically looking at a spreadsheet full of numbers and codes, and you have no idea what any of it means.
So are we basically setting ourselves up for disaster if we don't have good metadata? I feel like that could lead to all sorts of misinterpretations and potentially bad decisions. Right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, imagine you're analyzing sales data, but you don't have the metadata to tell you what currency the sales figures are in. Are we talking dollars, rupees, euros? You can see how that could be a problem.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Or even worse, you remember that story about a company accidentally printing internal product codes on customer-facing marketing materials because they didn't realize what that data represented?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a PR nightmare.
Total disaster.
So metadata is clearly super important. But, companies these days are drowning in data. How do we even know which pieces of information are actually worth our time and effort to manage from a data stewardship perspective?
That's a great point. Not all data is created equal, right? We focus on what we call key business data elements, KBEs for short.
KBEs.
These are the data elements that are absolutely vital to the core operations of a business. The ones that have the biggest impact on a company's success or failure. Think of them as the crown jewels of the data world.
Okay, I like that. Crown jewels. That definitely gives them a sense of importance. How do we go about identifying those KBEs? I mean, is it a gut feeling or is there a more structured approach?
Well, there are definitely some key things we consider. First, we look at what kind of data, if properly managed, offers the biggest return on investment.
Okay, ROI. Makes sense.
Think about a bank and the data they use to comply with anti-money laundering regulations.
Yeah.
The fines for non-compliance can be huge, so the data that feeds into those systems has a very high ROI.
Right. So it's not just about the data itself, it's about the potential consequences of getting it wrong.
Exactly. Another important factor is what we call executive focus.
Okay.
What are the key metrics and goals that the CEO and other top executives are always talking about? The data behind those metrics is almost certainly going to be a KBE.
Yeah.
For example, if your CEO is obsessed with customer satisfaction,
Right.
then the data that feeds into your customer satisfaction scores is going to be a KBE.
Okay, so if the CEO is always talking about it, it's probably a KBE.
Yeah.
Got it. But what happens if those metrics, or KBEs, aren't well defined? Like, what if we don't really know what we're measuring?
Oh, that can lead to so much confusion and misaligned efforts. I remember a story about a company that wanted to include a new metric in employee bonuses.
Okay.
Sounded like a great idea, right? But then when it came time to actually implement it, they realized that no one could clearly define what the metric actually meant or how it was calculated.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It was. It created a lot of frustration and confusion among employees. They didn't know what they were being measured on, so they couldn't effectively work towards the goal. This highlights why having clear definitions for KBEs is absolutely essential.
Totally agree. So it sounds like we've got a lot of potential pitfalls to avoid here. But okay, let's say we've identified those all-important KBEs. How do we actually go about ensuring that they're being used correctly and consistently across the entire organization? I mean, it can't just be left up to chance, can it?
You're absolutely right. It can't be left to chance. This is where data stewards step in. They're responsible for establishing the rules, so to speak, when it comes to how data is created, used, and even transformed. Think of them as the guardians of data quality, ensuring that everyone's playing by the same rules.
Okay, I like that, guardians of data quality. So what kind of rules are we talking about here?
Well, we have creation rules, which basically dictate when and how data is generated, who has the authority to create it, what checks need to be in place to prevent things like duplicate records or missing information.
Makes sense.
And then there are usage rules, which define what the data is meant for, how it can be used, and any limitations or restrictions that need to be considered.
So making sure the data is fit for purpose, right? Like we can't use customer data for marketing if they haven't consented to it.
You got it. And it's not just about legal compliance either. It's also about ensuring that the data is being used in a way that aligns with the overall goals of the business.
Okay, so we've got rules for how data is created and used. What about how it's transformed or calculated? I feel like that's got to be especially important for things like metrics and KPIs, where we need to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Absolutely. We call these derivation rules, and they're crucial for ensuring consistency and accuracy. Data stewards are responsible for defining how these calculations are performed and what logic is used. It might seem like a small detail, but it can make a huge difference. For example, something as seemingly simple as a loan delinquency date can be calculated in slightly different ways across different departments, leading to completely different results.
That's fascinating. I hadn't even thought about the inconsistencies that could arise from something like that. So it's not just about having the data, it's about making sure everyone's interpreting and using it in the same way.
Exactly. Data stewards play a crucial role in ironing out those inconsistencies and making sure everyone's speaking the same data language.
Now, speaking of consistency, let's talk about something I know is a hot topic in the data world. Data quality. Everyone agrees it's important, but what does it actually mean in the context of data stewardship?
That's a great question. Data quality is all about ensuring your data is, fit for its purpose, as we were just talking about. But it's more than just that. We need to define what quality means for each specific piece of data.
Okay.
Is it accuracy, completeness, consistency, timeliness, uniqueness? The specific criteria will depend on how the data is being used.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's tailored to the specific needs of each data element.
Precisely. Data quality is contextual. What matters most is that the data is reliable and appropriate for its intended use.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do data stewards actually manage data quality? What tools or techniques do they have at their disposal?
Well, one key tool is data profiling. Think of it as like a health check for your data. We run the data through a series of tests to see if it meets those predefined quality rules we were talking about. This helps us identify any potential issues that need to be addressed.
So we're looking for things like missing values, inconsistencies, or outliers that might indicate a problem.
Exactly. And then we move on to remediation, actually fixing those problems. This could involve cleaning up inconsistencies, correcting errors at the source, or even revising the rules themselves if they turn out to be unrealistic. Sometimes what looks like a data quality problem isn't actually a problem. For example, a company might find thousands of variations in how car model is recorded in their system.
Well, that sounds like a problem.
It could be, but if that data isn't actually being used for anything critical, then it might not be worth the effort to fix. Data stewards help us prioritize which data quality issues really matter. They help us focus on what truly impacts the business.
So it's about picking your battles. Not all data issues are created equal.
Exactly. Data stewards help us make those tough decisions about where to focus our efforts.
Now, we've talked a lot about definitions, rules, and quality checks. It sounds like there's a lot of information that needs to be tracked and managed. Is there a central place where all of this is stored? I'm imagining like a giant digital encyclopedia of data.
You're not far off. We have something called a business glossary. Think of it as the dictionary of your data, providing clear, agreed-upon definitions for all those key terms and concepts. And it's not just a static document. It's constantly being updated and refined as the business evolves.
That makes sense. So it's a living document that helps ensure everyone's speaking the same data language. But what happens when things inevitably go wrong? I mean, I'm sure data issues pop up all the time, even with the best data stewardship practices in place.
You're absolutely right. That's where the issue log comes in. It's our system for capturing, tracking, and ultimately resolving those data headaches. Anyone in the organization can report an issue, whether it's missing data, inconsistencies, or potential quality concerns.
So it's a way of holding people accountable and making sure that those issues actually get addressed.
It is about accountability, but it's also about continuous improvement. The issue log helps us identify patterns and prevent similar problems from cropping up in the future. We learn from our mistakes and make our data better over time.
It sounds like we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the importance of metadata, identifying key data elements, defining rules, managing data quality, and those essential tools like the business glossary and the issue log.
It's a big topic, but I think we've got a good foundation now.
This has been incredibly insightful.
I'm glad.
But the conversation doesn't stop here. We'll be back in a jiffy to delve deeper into data stewardship, including how all of this plays out in real-world scenarios.
You know, it's amazing how these seemingly simple concepts can have such a big ripple effect throughout an entire organization.
It really is true. I mean, we often think of data management as like this dry technical field. But when you start talking about the real-world implications, the potential for mistakes and the impact on a company's bottom line, it suddenly becomes a lot more interesting.
Absolutely. Data can be such a powerful tool for driving success, but only if it's managed effectively.
Right.
And that's where data stewardship comes in. It's about bridging that gap between the technical folks who work with the databases and the business users who rely on that data to make decisions.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Speaking of bridging gaps, let's go back to that business glossary we were talking about earlier. You mentioned it's like a dictionary of data, but what does that actually look like in practice? Is it literally just a massive spreadsheet with definitions?
It could be a spreadsheet, but in most cases, we're talking about a more sophisticated system. A lot of organizations use specialized software, designed specifically for managing business glossaries.
Okay.
These tools offer features like version control, so we can track changes over time, workflow management to kind of streamline the process of adding and updating definitions, and even integration with other data management tools.
So it's not just a static document. It's a dynamic system that evolves along with the business itself.
Precisely. A well-maintained business glossary is constantly being updated and refined. And it can be a really powerful tool for something called data rationalization.
Data rationalization. Now, there's a term I haven't heard before. What does that involve?
It's all about identifying and eliminating redundancies in your data. So you often find that different departments are using different terms for the same thing, or even worse, using the same term to mean different things.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely a recipe for confusion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the business glossary helps us create a common language for data, ensuring that everyone is on the same page, speaking the same data language. It's like that classic example of different departments calling the same customer by different variations of their name. It just leads to all sorts of confusion.
Right. So it's about establishing that single source of truth for all those important data definitions. But, I mean, wouldn't that be a massive undertaking, especially for large organizations with complex data landscapes?
It can be a challenge, but the benefits far outweigh the effort. A well-implemented business glossary helps enforce consistent naming conventions, making it easier to understand what each data element actually represents. And it also helps us map equivalent terms across different systems, which is essential for data integration projects.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not just about definitions. It's about creating a unified view of data across the entire organization.
Exactly. And that unified view is essential for making good decisions and avoiding those costly mistakes. If different departments are working from different sets of data or interpreting the same data in different ways, it's only a matter of time before problems arise.
Absolutely. Okay, so the business glossary gives us the what of our data. But what about the how? How do we define and enforce those data quality rules that we were talking about earlier? I mean, I'm imagining it's not as simple as just saying, like, this data needs to be accurate.
You're right. It's much more nuanced than that. We need to be very specific about what quality means for each individual data element. And, remember, different data elements will have different quality criteria depending on how they're being used.
Right.
So a data steward works very closely with the business users to establish these criteria.
I'm starting to see a theme here. Context is everything.
Absolutely. Data quality is not one size fits all.
Right.
It needs to be tailored to the specific needs of each data element and how it's being used.
So let's say we've gone through the process of defining our data quality rules. How do we actually measure and track data quality? Is that a manual process, or are there tools that can help us with that?
Oh, we definitely have tools to help. Data profiling, which we talked about earlier, that's one way to identify potential data quality issues.
Hmm.
But there are also more automated tools that can continuously monitor data quality and alert us to any violations of our rules.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it like a smoke detector for your data. It's constantly on the lookout for problems.
Okay, that's a great analogy. So it's not just a one-time check, it's an ongoing process.
Precisely. Data quality is a journey, not a destination. We need to be constantly vigilant and proactive in maintaining data quality.
All right, now for the tough question. What happens when we inevitably identify data quality issues? What are the next steps?
Well, this is where those data stewardship processes we talked about really kick in. Remember our trusty issue log?
Yeah.
That's where we document and track those issues. It's not about pointing fingers or placing blame. It's about creating a structured and repeatable process for addressing data quality problems and making sure that they're resolved effectively.
So we're creating a sort of audit trail for data
Yeah.
quality.
You could say that. It helps ensure transparency and accountability throughout the entire data lifecycle.
Okay.
We can track who reported the issue, what the root cause was, what steps were taken to remediate the problem, and who is responsible for each step. It's all about creating a closed-loop system for managing data quality.
Now, we've been talking a lot about processes and tools, but let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the human element of data stewardship.
Okay.
Who are the people behind all of this? I mean, we've mentioned data stewards, but are they the only ones involved?
Data stewards are certainly at the heart of it all, but it's important to remember they don't operate in a vacuum. They need support from across the organization to be truly effective.
What kind of support are we talking about?
Well, first and foremost, they need buy-in from the top.
Okay, from leadership.
If an organization truly believes that data is a valuable asset, then managing that asset needs to be a strategic priority. Data stewards need the authority and the resources to actually do their job effectively.
So it's not just about assigning someone the title of data steward and expecting them to just magically fix all the data problems.
Definitely not. Data stewardship needs to be embedded in the very culture of the organization. It's about creating a shared understanding of the importance of data quality and making sure that everyone feels responsible for contributing to it.
What about training and development?
Mm-hmm.
Do data stewards need any specialized skills to be successful?
Oh, absolutely. They need a solid understanding of, the technical aspects of data management.
Yeah.
They should be comfortable working with databases, understanding data models, navigating different data management tools. But they also need strong communication skills, the ability to work effectively with business users, and a knack for kind of navigating organizational dynamics.
Right.
It's a multifaceted role.
Yeah.
Requires a really unique blend of technical and business acumen.
It definitely sounds like a demanding role.
Yeah.
But also incredibly important, especially in today's, data-driven world.
It is challenging for sure, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
When you see those data quality improvements translate into tangible business benefits, it's very gratifying.
I bet. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here, but is there anything else you think our listeners should know about data stewardship before we move on? Any key takeaways or advice for those looking to implement these practices in their own organizations?
Yeah, one thing I want to emphasize is that data stewardship is an ongoing journey.
Oh.
It's not something you implement overnight and then just forget about.
Right.
It requires continuous effort, collaboration, and a commitment to improvement.
So it's not just about implementing a set of tools and processes, but about fostering a culture of data quality.
Exactly. And that culture needs to be nurtured and sustained over time. It's an ongoing process of education, communication, and collaboration.
I think that's a great point to end on. Data stewardship is not a quick fix. It's a long-term investment in the health and integrity of an organization's most valuable asset. It's data. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've spent this episode, really exploring the ins and outs of data stewardship. I have to say, I'm kind of starting to see data in a whole new light. It's not just about ones and zeros anymore. It's really about bringing order to complexity, making sure that data is truly serving the needs of the business.
It really is a fascinating field, isn't it? We've unpacked a lot of complex ideas, from metadata to key business data elements, data quality, and those essential tools like the business glossary and the issue log. It's a lot to take in, but hopefully our listeners are starting to, grasp the importance of data stewardship and the impact it can have on an organization.
One of the things that really struck me is how interwoven data stewardship is with so many other aspects of data management. It's not just a standalone function. It's connected to everything.
You're absolutely right. Data stewardship plays such a critical role in data quality improvement efforts, master data management projects, data warehousing initiatives. It even touches on areas like information security and regulatory compliance. It really is the glue that holds all these different pieces together.
Yeah, it makes me think of that library analogy again. Like a good data steward is like the ultimate librarian, right? They're not just organizing books, they're understanding their content, connecting them to readers' needs, and making sure that the whole library runs smoothly for everyone.
That's a perfect analogy. A data steward is a facilitator, a problem solver, and a champion for data quality across the organization.
Now, I know some of our listeners out there are probably thinking, this all sounds great in theory, but like, where do we even begin? What advice would you give to organizations that are looking to implement data stewardship practices? It could seem a bit daunting.
Well, I think the first step is simply acknowledging that data is a valuable asset that needs to be managed effectively. It's not just an IT problem, it's a business problem, and it requires a strategic approach.
So it starts with a shift in mindset.
Exactly. Data stewardship needs to be a strategic priority, it needs to be supported by leadership, and it needs to be integrated into the overall data management strategy. Can't be an afterthought.
All right, so let's say we've got that buy-in from leadership. What's next? How do we go about identifying those key business data elements, those KBEs we talked about? Where do we even start?
A good starting point is to just think about the data that's most critical to your core business operations. Ask yourself, what data, if it were inaccurate or inconsistent, could have the biggest negative impact on our business? Those are likely your KBEs. Those are the data elements that really matter.
Okay, so we've identified our KDEs.
Right.
And then we need to appoint our data stewards, right? Those guardians of data quality.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not just about giving someone a title. Data stewards need proper training, they need ongoing support, and they need the authority to do their jobs effectively. They need to be empowered to make decisions and drive change.
And of course, we can't forget about those essential tools we talked about. The business glossary and the issue log.
Right. Those tools provide structure and transparency to the entire data stewardship process. They help us define our terms, track our progress, and address any problems that arise.
Is there any other advice that you would give to, those embarking on this data stewardship journey? Any words of wisdom you can offer?
Be patient. Data stewardship, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It takes time to build a truly data-driven culture and establish effective data stewardship practices. So don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight.
So true. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, there are a ton of resources available from industry organizations to consultants, online communities. There's a whole world of data stewardship expertise out there.
That's right. And don't underestimate the power of collaboration.
Yeah.
Data stewardship is a team sport, and the more people you can get on board, the more successful you will be.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Just this. Data stewardship is an investment. It's an investment that pays off in countless ways, better decision-making, improved efficiency, reduced risk, and ultimately a more successful organization. It's an investment that's worth making.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. If you enjoyed this deep dive into data stewardship, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to The Deep Dive for more insightful discussions. Until next time, keep diving deeper into the fascinating world of data.